right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of GRG Talks. I am here with guys becoming a veteran of the show.
I think we're
Tim Lynch.
gonna rename it Tuesday with Timmy.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
love it. Tuesday with Timmy. This is GRG Talks Tuesday with Timmy edition. That's awesome. Today, we're talking about closing, which is everyone's simultaneously favorite and most excruciating part of the buying process and selling process. Tim, you recorded some videos sort of as an agent for your clients that kind of walk through step-by-step process in the closing, which is why we brought you in here today to talk a little bit about the closing process. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So here on Tuesday with Timmy, we're going to talk about your offer having been accepted. Congratulations. You did it.
Congratulations.
You got it. So now the question is, now what? You don't get handed the keys right away. There's actually a whole process that happens after the offer has been accepted. Can you talk a little bit about some of the high-level steps that have to happen after the offer has been accepted?
Yeah, certainly. So each transaction is different, but in every transaction, there's several contingencies in place that are fairly common. So first thing you need to do as the buyer is you go and deposit your earnest money at escrow. And then after that, you'll do your home inspection. You know, one of the most critical elements of buying a home is inspecting the house. So you do your home inspection. The home inspector may or may not require or recommend some additional inspections for you, such as maybe bringing a roofer out or an electrician or a plumber to check out those specific components of the home in a little more thorough detail. So you have the opportunity to do that if necessary. And then you'll go through a negotiation process with the seller. Your home inspector will give you a thorough, detailed report with pictures of their findings. You'll meet with your agent to talk about what it is you want to ask the seller to do. What kind of concessions do you want? Do you want repairs done? Do you want money towards closing costs in lieu of those repairs, and you can handle those later when you take possession and ownership of the home, or a combination of the two? So you'll have a negotiation process after your home inspection. When that's finalized and settled, if you're continuing through the process to purchase and close on the home, you'll have your appraisal. You know, you're working with your lender continually, getting them updated financial documents, updated W-2s, bank statements, things of that nature. You'll review title report, another very important element, making sure that the seller has equitable title. Can they sell the house to you? Are there any liens or encumbrances against the property that you are unaware of at the time of walking through the home prior to making your offer? So you want to make sure you review those liens, encumbrances against the property. Again, to make sure that you don't want to take on some sort of lien against the house after closing. Right. Got to make sure those are all paid and taken care of through the closing process. Yeah. So, and then, there's going to be potentially a well inspection or a septic inspection, house dependent, obviously, but those could be done as well. So the seller, if it's on a septic system, the seller will pump and inspect the septic for you. Give you all those reports, make repairs as necessary through that process as well. And then testing the well water for bacteria and nitrates, making sure it's safe drinking potable water. So that's all wrapped up. Then you'll continue through the closing process, continue working with your lender. And when we get to the point of within the last few days prior to closing, you'll do a final walkthrough of the house. If the seller made any repairs that were negotiated through the inspection process, make sure those are done. You'll want to get the invoices from the contractors to show they did the work and that they were paid for the work. Because again, you don't want the contractor to lien the property if the seller hasn't paid them, and now all of a sudden after closing you have a unexpected bill due. Right. So yeah. And final walkthrough is also another time that you just get to make sure the house is still in the condition in which you saw it when you walked through. So summertime's coming, so that would include mowing the lawn, making sure the grass is maintained, making sure your systems and appliances still operate through closing. So, the furnace, maybe crank up the heat a little bit, make sure the furnace turns on, run some water, make sure the hot water still works. So all those things you'll do at your final walkthrough.
How long does the process typically take? Being aware, of course, that every house is a little bit different, but what can sellers and buyers expect in terms of the timetable?
Yeah, I mean the largest driver to the timeline is really your lender.
Oh.
The lender in the appraisal process really is the longest time of this whole transaction. So your home inspection typically is within the first 5 to 10 days. You get that done, but for closing the loan, it's 30 days, 45 days, somewhere kind of that range.
Yeah.
So it all does vary, but that's typically the timeline.
Okay. Now I remember when we were shooting the videos that you were putting together that were more for you, kind of as a personal assistance to the clients you work with. And I remember halfway through thinking, man, it's a good thing that he's a realtor, because I would have no idea how to do this process if I were on my own. Can you talk about how kind of important, how much easier it is to have a realtor during this process?
Yeah, like I mentioned before in the process, there's just a lot of moving parts all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Your home inspection, your title report, your septic, your well, appraisal. So there's a lot of things happening at once, and your realtor kind of acts as that middleman, if you will, to where if you have a question, you just call your realtor no matter what it is, and we'll know where to get you the answer.
Right.
Whether it's, do we need to call title? Do we need to call escrow? Do you have a question for your home inspector? Who is it that we need to touch base with for you to make sure that that's done? And you get a house free and clear at. Well,
Yeah, it just feels like you're a little bit more protected.
a little more protected that way, because this is our full-time job, so
Yeah.
this is what we do on a daily basis, whereas buying and selling a house happens pretty infrequently for a homeowner.
Right.
So processes continue to change, and we stay up to date on those changes for you.
How about being organized? How important is it for the sellers and the buyers in these circumstances to come to the table with the paperwork organized and like their own timetables maybe organized? How important is organization in this process?
Organization is pretty crucial, because we have a specific timeline we must follow that is negotiated through the purchase and sale agreement. And so you need to make sure you are aware of your deadlines when your home inspection contingency expires, when your financing contingency may expire. So it's really important to stay organized and stay on top of those important dates.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Has a home ever fallen through? And you don't have to be specific, because we don't want to do that. We don't call anybody out on the podcast. But while you're going through this closing process, have you ever experienced or seen a home fall through actually during this part? And what is it that's typically responsible for that sort of hiccup?
Sure, yeah. Homes fall through. They don't all close. The biggest driver to that is the home inspection, typically. So, when we walk through a house, we're looking at the interior of the home. What kind of finishes are on? What kind of flooring do you have? Countertops, that kind of things. But we don't go in the attic. We don't go in the crawl space. We don't go on the roof. So your home inspector is really vital to make sure they look at all those components of the house. And after that, and getting that report, if you can't come to some sort of an agreement with the seller as to the concessions that you want to see in order to close, then that's a big driver. That's usually where most transactions fail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you would want people to be aware of as we close out the show, to make sure that they have their eye on when they're actually going through this process?
Yeah, timetables, I really drive those home pretty hard, because they're very, very important, because you've got to stick to those. So really making sure you stay to your timeline, and just talk with your realtor. Make sure you're working with somebody that you really trust, that knows that has your best interest, and just stay in communication. If you have a question, reach out. So you shouldn't be sitting at home stewing on questions that are unanswered. So make sure you get those answers.
Good. That's great advice. Ask the questions that need to be asked.
That's right.
Because this, to me, the closing process is it's very exciting when you are, if you're the buyer, it's really exciting because you're about to get into this home. You can taste it. And as a seller, you know, you're finally starting to see your work kind of come to fruition. So I imagine that this is like the moment where everybody gets a little bit anxious, everybody's a little bit like wanting it to be finished. And you, as the realtor, have to come in and make sure that everyone's like aware of kind of how long this process will take. There might be some bumps in the road. So I think it's pretty important to have a realtor on that case.
Absolutely.
It's great. It's a really awesome subject. If you are one of Tim's clients, he did special videos walking through the process, by the way. They're pretty spectacular. Tim, we want to thank you for joining us here on Tuesdays with Timmy, new GRG Talks podcast. Thanks, Tim, for joining the show.
All right. Thank you.